creating impact. So thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize. Always something with technology, right? So yes, my name is Tara Elizabeth Gush. I am the founder of Soul Vitality. I work as an emotional wellness and integrated health coach. And I'm really excited to be here to talk about this topic. I was just actually at another event last night up in the Newark area in a room full of health and wellness humans. And we are putting together an event next September that's also just really focusing on this topic. And what we spoke to and about last night a lot was how this topic is really important all the time, but given what has occurred in the last 2 years with the pandemic and so many different shifts and changes for a lot of people, this topic of really putting a focus on our own emotional wellness and learning how to balance our work life, our family life, our social life, and really focus on our health in general is just really extra important. You know, I think we've all kind of been impacted in a different capacity in the last 2 years. And so this topic is really kind of more important now than ever. I wanted to just kind of briefly share a little bit about myself, who I am, where I come from, a little bit about my story, because it really kind of pertains to how I have landed myself in front of you all talking about this topic today. So I started actually as an elementary school teacher in the state of Delaware. I spent 10 years working as a special education teacher, grades K to 5. I worked with a lot of students with learning disabilities, mental health issues, challenges of that nature. And so my role as a teacher, what I believe was less as far as learning goes academically, but more so emotional support, mental health support, and really behavior modification. So that's my main background. I worked as a teacher, a special ed coordinator, math specialist. After about 10 years, I decided to leave my teaching career and actually completely shift gears to work with dogs. So in 2012, I left my teaching career to start my own business as a dog trainer, and also got into pet sitting. So now I still do own both of those businesses. And interestingly, when I moved into that business, one of my goals was to not really work with humans anymore. I really wanted to work with dogs. And what I quickly found out was that working with dogs was really more about working with the humans. So again, there's a lot of emotional wellness involved in that, a lot of emotional support to dog owners who are dealing with, I dealt with a lot of rescue dogs, so a lot of behavioral issues. So again, behavioral modification. And during the time that I was kind of shifting through both of those careers and moving into this new career path, I was also dealing with some personal issues. I have a long history of trauma from childhood into adulthood. And during a great deal of that time, I was also in a really toxic marriage. And so there was a point in time in both of those careers where I was not focusing on my own emotional wellness and balance. I didn't have the tools or the resources to do so. And so that's partially why I left my teaching career. You know, I wasn't focusing on these things, and I was not able to show up as the best version of myself in the professional workplace and also in my personal life. And so through my own kind of trials and challenges, I started to kind of dive into my own inner work and what I needed to do that. And that brought me to therapy. It brought me to yoga. It brought me to meditation. It brought me to breath work. It brought me to dealing with some gut health issues. There was a point in time where I was also really physically ill. And so my own journey, which I would say lasted about 8 to 10 years, really, to get me to the point where I am here today to share this with you, is what has led me here. So I know that everybody kind of has their own story, their own journey. So hopefully some of what I share with you today resonates. Some of it may not. What I'm sharing with you today is not going to be rocket science. A lot of it may be things that you have heard, but my goal, my hope in sharing this Create Impact method with you today is that you find something of value and that you're able to, step off the computer today and walk away with at least one tangible tool, one tangible resource that you can use and you can implement into your life starting tomorrow. So let's see if I can work this PowerPoint. Perfect. Okay. So my job, my goal, really, emotional wellness and balance in the workplace, helping driven professionals master emotional wellness and integrate daily practices so that you can create greater impact, balance, and happiness in your personal and professional life. So we'll talk a little bit about work-life balance, stress management, emotional wellness, self-awareness, stress response patterns, communication patterns, and daily habits. And I kind of want to address that word balance also before we even get into anything, right? We always have this picture perfect idea of having work-life balance, which may seem like, everything's going to fit perfectly and you're going to spend the same amount of time in each area of your life. But I think the reality for all of us is that's often not the case, right? There's going to be weeks where, things are going on at work that are more stressful. Maybe you have a bigger project coming up. Maybe you're short-staffed. You have to work longer hours. There's going to be times in your life where you have to put more energy and time into work, and personal things may be put on the back burner, and vice versa. So I think for me, really, the goal of this Create Impact method is that not so much that we figure out how to perfectly balance the scale, but more so to make sure that we have all the tools and resources in our toolbox so that when we're in that imbalanced time in our life, we can still thrive during that time, right? We have the emotional support, we have the systems in place, we have the things that we know how to do and not do that are going to kind of help us keep our head on straight when we are in that kind of out of balance mode. So I'm just going to play a little game. I don't think I was looking because I'm not sure if this is like Zoom where you can actually raise your hand or do anything. But so I'll just ask the questions if you kind of want to answer them in your head. Just a little never have I ever game. And I just have some examples, right? So never have I ever said something or written an email out of anger that you later regretted. Let your coffee cup on top of your car when you drive out of the parking spot.
Hey, Tara, can I just say, you can
Okay.
put it in the chat. I don't think we can raise hands, but we can put things in the chat. So we might want to encourage people to do that while you're going.
Absolutely. And I like things to be interactive. So excuse me, if you have any questions throughout it, feel free to do that. If anything that I'm reading here on the never ever, you can just put a yes, that's me, or that's funny. If anything resonates with you, feel free to pop it in there and we can kind of chat that way for sure. So where are we at? Let's see. Never have I ever, right? Late to work because you couldn't find your car keys, snapped at your partner when you got home from a stressful work day, had difficulty sleeping, experienced digestive problems, experienced chronic pain or tension in your head, neck, shoulders, thought of hitting happy hour immediately post-work or every single Friday, had a disagreement with a coworker, had difficulty making a decision at work, felt discontent in your personal or professional life, experienced stress, anxiety, depression, anger, fear, worry, or sadness, right? Who do we have on here, right? Hitting happy hour, yes. I remember when I was a teacher, happy hour was a thing, right? I don't really work a 9-to-5 Monday through Friday job anymore, so Friday doesn't really mean anything to me. But I remember as a teacher, Friday happy hour was the thing to do, right? Yes to all, done more than 50% of these, absolutely. Pretty much done all except putting my coffee on top of the car, but often spill it. I do that all the time. Absolutely. More than 75%, pretty much all about the coffee. So I guess I'm the only one who's left my coffee on top of the car, huh? But all of these things are things that happen to all of us, right? And typically these things are happening because we are in like go, go, go mode all the time. We're not sleeping well. We're rushing around. Left my purse on top of the car. Yes, I have done that as well. And I'm sure that if we sat here and brainstorm, we could come up with a much longer list of things that we've all done. And I get myself into this too, even in the business that I'm in. I'm not always practicing what I preach. And this happened a couple weeks ago. My schedule kind of changed and I wasn't doing some of my self-care practices. And I was late to work one morning because I could not find my keys. So when those types of things happen, those should kind of be like little light bulb moments to say, hey, what is going on right now in my world? Where in my space am I not tending to myself, right? I could add a few more. Yes, absolutely. These are signs and symptoms to let us know like, hey, it's time to slow down. And also really just getting sick. And I don't get sick very often because of the way I take care of myself. But when I do get sick, it's a very huge sign for me to take a step back and say, okay, Where am I not taking care of myself? Where, how, why am I not resting? What am I eating? What am I doing? All these things. So, we don't want to spend a lot of time on this list and make it seem negative, but just kind of things to get you thinking, and if maybe you've only lost your keys once in the year, not a big deal. But if you're the person who's losing your keys every single week, spilling your coffee every day on your way to work, feeling kind of stressed and anxious all the time, those are times when you need to kind of take a step back and say, okay, what is it that I need to do? So the I.M.P.A.C.T method, it's a mind, body, gut approach to transformative living. I think oftentimes when we are looking to make a shift in our life, we have a tendency to focus on one of these areas as opposed to all of them, right? You want to lose some weight, you hire a trainer at the gym, you go and you work on just your body. You're feeling stressed, anxious, depressed, maybe you go and see a therapist, but you don't work on the other pieces of it. And so what will often happen is we work on one piece of the puzzle and then the other pieces are still lacking. So this approach is meant to kind of bring everything together and talk about how it all works together, right? So thinking about, what are we feeding our mind? What are we feeding our gut? And what are we feeding our body? And then talking about how they are all interconnected and related, like so intimately. So the I.M.P.A.C.T method is this lovely little acronym, right? The letter I, implement a morning routine. And jot in the chat room as we're going through this, just kind of type in if you want to share if you already have a morning routine. So let me know if you actually have one or if it's something that you're interested in. Movement implemented daily. Maybe type in the chat room if you want, if you are someone who does move daily or not. Practice gut health habits. Do you know what gut healthy habits might be? A, for action plans for self-care. C, clear and intentional communication. And T, transforming stress response patterns. So this method, the I.M.P.A.C.T method, with clients that I'm coaching, this would be done through what I call my 45 to Thrive program. So it's a 45-day program where we put all of these things into place for 45 days, right? Because oftentimes we'll start something, we don't follow through, we maybe work with the trainer for 2 to 3 weeks and then we cancel. So we really need more than a full month to create new habits. So I'm going to go through each of these kind of one by one, and I'll kind of watch the time, and depending on how much time we have and what people are interested in, if there's time at the end, we can either do a quick little breath work session, or we can do a little exercise for stress response patterns. So when we get through all this, you all can let me know what you might prefer to do more of. So let's start with I, implement a morning routine, right? Which sounds like a really easy thing to do. But the reality is that most of us don't have one, or we don't do it every day. So what I've created is called the Fab 5 morning routine. So there are 5 things, and you'll notice for whatever reason, I really like the number 5. It's easy. It kind of rhymes with things. It's an easy number to count by. So the Fab 5 morning routine, the first one is to set your alarm 5 minutes earlier. And I don't have this listed on here, but also to not hit the snooze button. Let's see, movement. I start my day with exercise. Awesome. Even when I'm dead tired, I split it up between walking, swimming, biking, rollerblading. Fun. Awesome. Marsha, thank you. Remind me of that when we get to movement, because I want to talk about that. I like that you kind of mix things up a little bit. So the Fab 5 morning routine, set your alarm 5 minutes earlier and don't hit snooze. And I am guilty of hitting snooze on occasion too. But the reality is when you hit snooze and you think you're getting more sleep, you're really not. You're getting kind of uninterrupted and not healthy sleep after that. So once your alarm goes off, turn it off, get up, and get right to step number 2. So number 2 in your Fab 5 morning routine would be 5 minutes of meditation. If you are brand new to meditation, start with 1 minute and work your way up. If you want to meditate for longer than 5 minutes, then by all means do that. I will tell you myself personally, on Sundays, I make my morning routine like an hour to an hour and a half long. So on Sundays, I meditate for about 30 to 40 minutes. And the other days during the week, I do not meditate that long. So you can pick one day maybe where you do that, where you meditate for longer. And I feel like for a lot of people, meditation is kind of a scary word. So I'm curious if anybody wants to pop in the chat and just let me know if you do have a meditation practice, if you've never tried meditation, if meditation totally freaks you out, if you feel like you're not capable of meditating, any of those things, right? I think when we think of meditation, we assume that we have to be, in a certain space with incense burning, and, it has to be done a certain way. And really all meditation means is just sitting in stillness and kind of attempting to shut your brain off a little bit. For the meditation, you can meditate in complete silence. You can hop on Spotify and pick a meditation soundtrack, or you can hop on Spotify and pick a guided meditation. So I choose all of those depending on how I feel that day. So sometimes I will sit in silence. More likely than not, I use music. And then on occasion, if my mind is really kind of feeling like monkey brain and I'm going to be more challenged to kind of slow that down, I will choose a guided meditation. Spotify is a really good resource if you don't have it. You can hop onto Spotify and pick the exact minutes of meditation that you want. So if you just hop in Spotify and in the search button, look for 1, 2, 5, 10, 20-minute meditations, you can find all different types of things. I meditate as part of my yoga practice. Awesome. Yeah. And yoga is another thing that we'll talk about as well. Yoga, 100%, I would say, saved my life about 5 years ago. So it's excellent. Just got back from teaching yoga this morning. Number 3, so after you meditate, I would encourage you to do some breath work. And that's another thing that might be new to people. I am certified as a breathwork facilitator to teach something called circular breath work, which is a little bit more intense and meant to kind of bring up some feelings and get rid of stuck energy. But as far as doing breath work in the morning, or for what our purpose is today, we're going to talk about more grounding breath work. And there's a large variety of types of breath work that you can do. A really, really easy one to do is box breath. And I like it to do it with the 5 count, again, because 5 is just an easy number to remember. So if you picture a box, right, all 4 sides are the same length. So 5 count, you're going to inhale for 5 counts. You're going to hold your breath at the top for 5 counts. You're going to slowly exhale for 5 counts, and then you're going to hold your breath at the bottom for 5 counts. I would encourage you to inhale slowly through your nose, and then either exhale out through your nose or exhale out through a very small space between your lips. So the 5 count box breath, and I would say to either do that 5 times or for 5 minutes. So whatever works for you. If you're just starting out with breath work and it is new for you, I would suggest 5 times. If you're comfortable with breath work, or you really start to like how it feels immediately, then try to do it for 5 minutes. So this type of breathing is a grounding breathing exercise. It's going to help just kind of settle you, relax you. You should notice, honestly, by the second round of this breath, you should physically start to feel things in your head, neck, and shoulders release. This is a nice breath that you can take with you anywhere. So if you are sitting in traffic, we've already having summer traffic here in Rehoboth. It's crazy. If you're at work having a stressful meeting, if you have a meeting coming up, it's a really easy thing to do in your parked car. I wouldn't suggest doing this while you're actually driving, but pull over to the side of the road or pull into a parking lot. If you're at work, head to the bathroom for 5 minutes and just do some breath work there. You can even do breath work at your desk. So breathwork is amazing. If I would encourage you to do anything, that would be the first thing I would encourage you to do. Your breath can literally change the chemistry of your brain. It can change your physical health, and it can change your mental health. So super, super important. So once you have gotten out of bed with no snooze button, done your meditation, done your breathing, you're then going to do 5 minutes of journaling. Now, I have free write on here. In my 45 to Thrive program, I actually give out specific prompts, journal prompts for each day of the 45 days. But I would suggest if you're just starting out, do it as a free write. So just kind of brain dump anything that you're thinking or feeling, no shame, no judgment. The idea of getting our thoughts and our feelings from our brain onto paper, it's a really nice way to physically release what we're storing in our head. So journaling is awesome. It's also nice too. You can kind of track your feelings throughout the week and see how things are going. And then number 5 on your Fab 5 morning routine is going to be 5 daily to-dos. So I don't know about anybody else, but I have a tendency to write these really long to-do lists, right? I'll wake up and I start jotting down what I need to do. And next thing I know, I've got 25 things on my to-do list. And then that becomes really overwhelming. And at the end of the day, I realize that I've only gotten maybe 5 of those things done. And then I start to feel really bad about myself because I have all these other things left that haven't been checked off. So set yourself up for success. Just pick 5 things, even if you have more to do. Pick the top 5 things that are most important, that take most priority, that you are 90% certain that you can accomplish that day, so that at the end of the day, you can cross those 5 things off and you can feel successful. So as I'm chit-chatting a little bit more about this, you can pop in the chat if you like, if you have any questions about the morning routine, if you have any comments about that, if there's anything on here that you already do, or anything that you would be really interested in added. So like I said, this can take longer or less time depending on how much time you want to put into it. If you set it up like this with the getting up 5 minutes earlier, your 5 minutes of meditation, 5 minutes of breath work, 5 minutes of a free write, right? 5, 10, 15, 20. You're looking at maybe 25 minutes tops for the morning routine. So depending on what your morning is like, you may need to get up a little bit earlier than 5 minutes to do that. But the way that you start your day is the way that you're going to live out the rest of your day, right? Is there a similar evening routine to shut down our minds? Absolutely, yes. I would say very similar. I do have some people who don't like to do the journaling in the morning and they prefer to do it at night. So that's also an option too. Because in the morning you wake up, you're kind of fresh, and maybe journaling works for you better at nighttime. You've had your day, you have things you need to get off your brain and off your chest. But yeah, I would say you could do all of these things at night before you go to bed. You could do it in the morning and in the evening. One of the other big things I would add to your evening routine, and I'm really guilty of this, is the phone. So shutting down your phone and your laptop, all the electronics, about an hour before bedtime instead of scrolling through social media, right? I do my free write and daily to do the night before to help yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. And like I said, whichever one works, if all of these don't work for you in the morning, then certainly don't do them. I would say if you like to do your free write and your to-dos at night, then at least get up and do the meditation and the breathing in the morning. And I would also encourage you to do the meditation and the breathing in the evening as well, particularly if you are somebody who has a difficult time shutting down your mind, if you are somebody who has insomnia, right? And yeah, writing down your thoughts and your to-do list the night before so that you're not falling asleep with like that anxiety of the next day. So absolutely, you could take the same exact routine minus the alarm thing and do it both morning and night for sure. And then, like I said, in the evening, one of the other things to think about is the electronics and the social media and the phone and getting rid of that. Helpful. Thank you. Awesome, Stephanie. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah. And the morning routine is really helpful. And I always say practice what I preach, right? I don't always practice what I preach. There are days where this morning routine does not happen. I don't have children, but I have 3 dogs. One is a senior. He's really sick. So sometimes my morning routine gets jacked up by life. So that's just how it goes. But on those mornings, I try to do at least something. I will, even if my morning has not gone on as planned because of the dogs or whatever the case is, I will put on a guided meditation while I'm in the shower. I will bring my phone and my speaker into the bathroom and I will put on a guided meditation while I'm showering. Sometimes I'll come down and I'll put on really relaxing classical music while I'm making my coffee and feeding the dog. So it doesn't always have to be picture perfect. Just find ways that you can tweak and shift what you're doing and create a meditative process out of things that need to be done in the morning. So think about any of those things that you could, this is a really easy thing that you can start to incorporate tonight or tomorrow. So let's move next to movement. movement implemented daily. So the way that you move affects how you think and feel, as well as your physical health. And I know we had a comment up above about, I don't know if I can scroll back up here to see what it was. Let's see. I can't. Oh, yes, I can. Start my day with exercise, which is great. And everybody's different. Some people like to exercise in the morning, afternoon, evening. It depends on when you feel your best. Even when you're tired, absolutely. I will tell you that you will never regret moving your body, and splitting it up between walking, swimming, biking. I'm reading through the comment here, and rollerblading. Yeah, absolutely. And switch up your movement. If you look here on the PowerPoint, I have, regular kind of aerobic exercise. Research shows that it actually increases a brain protein called BDNF that helps your nerve fibers grow. So that helps with stress and anxiety. Moderate intensity, like moderate cycling and such, is helpful to improve ADHD. More meditative movements is helpful for improving depressive symptoms. Synchronized movement, this is something I just read up on, is actually helpful in increasing self-esteem. So different types of movements are going to do different things for you. And I think what you need to start to be aware of and create some self-awareness in yourself is which movements work for you. I have gone through every movement you can think of. I've been in the fitness world for a very long time. I've instructed cycling, CrossFit endurance, yoga, Pilates, HIIT workouts. And I've done everything from running to triathlons to CrossFit. And now my routine is usually a mix of yoga, Pilates, boxing, and some strength training. And I've chosen all of those because they work for me. They feel good in my body, and I choose what works for my mood that day, right? There are days when I might be feeling a little more frustrated than others. And for me, that's a day that I'm going to go box because it makes me feel better. There are days where I'm feeling a little lethargic or tired, or maybe I'm a little bit depressed. I'm going to go take a yoga class, right? So you want to start to be mindful of how you feel. And that might be something you could even journal about. That could be a journal prompt for you. How did I move today, and how did it make me feel? So if you took a boxing class, how did you leave when you felt that class, right? Did you feel exhausted, or did you feel empowered? When you leave a yoga class, how do you feel? So start to kind of just really be mindful and aware of which types of movements work for you. And not even just which type of movements, but also where and how you're doing your movement. So if you're somebody who prefers to take virtual classes, which that's one of the amazing things with COVID, right? So many more things are available to us virtually. I personally like to get out of my house. I like to go to the gym. I like to take group classes. I have a group of friends that we meet every Monday, and we do strength training together. I also like to get outside. So consider for yourself how you feel after you move different ways, and think about what makes the most sense for you based on your mood and your own emotional wellness. But I always say movement is medicine, 100%. P is practice gut healthy habits. So this for me is huge. And I'll share a little bit about my personal story with this, as well as my training. For me personally, when I was teaching and kind of moving into the business, and I was also in a really toxic situation, I was starting to experience some physical issues, right? I was really sick all the time. I had a lot of digestive issues. I was really lethargic. And at that time, I was also really healthy in my mind, right? I was working out. I was eating a vegetarian and then a pescatarian diet. And I could not for the life of me figure out why I was sick all the time. I was really prone to getting food poisoning. I had a lot of sensitivities to different types of food. And it got to the point where I was so lethargic, I was like falling asleep at the wheel. So it took several years of going to different doctors who told me that I had IBS or, whatever it was. And I finally was able to find a holistic doctor and do some testing. And I was diagnosed with something called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which sounds lovely. But our gut is full of all kinds of bacteria, good and bad. And so what had happened in my body due to a lot of antibiotic use from being really sick a lot, and also stress, was that I had developed, I call this now a digestive disorder, right? So the microbiome was completely off. My balance of good and bad bacteria was not what it needed to be. I apologize. My dogs are pittering around here now. And my gut lining had become permeable. So even though I was eating a really healthy diet, I was living on fruits and veggies and hummus and all these things that I thought were super healthy, my gut was not digesting them properly. And my food was going out through these little holes in the gut lining and into my body as toxins, which is essentially how it was described. And because of that, I wasn't absorbing the vitamins and minerals. And so at the time I received this diagnosis, my blood work also showed that I was fully deficient in vitamin D, iron, and B12, which would have explained a lot of things, right? My mood, my emotional status at the time, and also how tired I was. So that is how I kind of started my journey to gut health. I am now currently certified as a holistic health coach and a gut health coach. And so your gut health is connected to so many things, right? Your gut is your second brain. If you look at the bottom here, there's a little note. Stress can make the gut and intestines more permeable. Stress can also activate the immune and pro-inflammatory responses, which then trigger stress hormones to be released. So many mood disorders manifest in our gut and then actually travel by the way of the vagus nerve and other organs up to our brain. So there's a lot of research coming out now on things like depression and anxiety, and making these statements that, hey, instead of just kind of prescribing people Xanax and Prozac and things like that when they come in and they're depressed or anxious, why don't we take a look at what's going on in their guts and work on their gut health first and see if the body can actually heal itself? All of your stress hormones are created in your gut, and then that's how it goes out to, the rest of your body to help you survive. But if you're somebody who is constantly kind of living in survival mode and that fight or flight mode because you're stressed and anxious all the time, your gut is not going to work properly, right? Those stress hormones are going to be activated. A lot of inflammation occurs, which then also leads to a lot of disease and illness. So healing your gut is usually and always the first thing that I talk to clients about, because if your gut is not healthy, then we really can't get the rest of you fully healthy either. So just things to think about, and people don't need to share, but you can think in your own mind, if you do experience digestive issues. So if you are somebody who experiences digestive issues, if you're regular, if you're not regular, if you experience heartburn a lot, gas and bloating, and if you are prone to food poisoning fairly easily, if you tend to have what you think might be food allergies or food intolerances, if you tend to have breakouts in your skin or rashes, there's a lot of things to think about. And many of those things are not necessarily IBS, right? That's kind of like a Band-Aid code for not really knowing what's going on. So there's a lot of things to look at within the gut. I don't have probiotics on here. I don't know why I didn't think to put that on there, but that would 100% be one of the things I would put on this list as well. So these are just some ideas, tips, that you can add to your daily routine as far as gut health goes. I 100% would say look into a probiotic. That is something I also work with a company called Plexus. We have probiotics and some other supplements that really work to heal the gut and the gut lining. But probiotics are really important, and finding the right one is really important. Staying hydrated, right? If we're dehydrated all the time, which a lot of us are, right? I'm sitting here drinking my coffee. But staying hydrated, we need at least, somewhere between 6 to 10 cups of water a day. And oftentimes we're not getting that. So hydration definitely helps keep the digestive tract moving properly. Reducing or eliminating alcohol, right? I try not to tell people to fully eliminate anything unless it's really harmful to you, right? But moderation, so reducing it, drinking less alcohol at happy hour maybe. Eating breakfast, super important, especially for females, as far as our hormones go. I am definitely somebody who did intermittent fasting in the past, thinking it was a lovely idea. I'm usually not hungry in the morning. But we do need to have breakfast, even if it's a light breakfast, specifically if you drink coffee. So even if it's something light, finding some way to get a small breakfast in your body that has both protein and fat in it. So for me, I love my coffee. It used to be the first thing that I did. I was noticing a lot of problems with that. I'm also in the stage of my life where I'm dealing with some hormonal issues. So I had to look into that and do some research. So I will now do a protein shake with protein powder and some nut butter. So I'm getting my protein and my fat, and I do that before I put coffee into my body. So starting out with something in the morning that is healthy and clean. Moving your body, we've already talked about that, but that is also important for your gut health. If you're sitting and you're sedentary all the time, things are not going to work and move in your belly either. So movement helps the digestive tract move along as well. Non-processed foods, which is really hard to do, right? Depending on your schedule. When you go grocery shopping, think about shopping in the outer edge of the grocery store, excuse me, instead of the center aisles, right? If you head into the grocery store, you'll notice that most of the center aisles are processed foods in boxes or cans or bags with a ton of ingredients. So try to shop more so from the outer edge of the store rather than the inner edge of the store. Don't go shopping when you're hungry. I don't know if anybody on here uses Instacart, but I feel like that has been one of the best things that has come out of the pandemic. I use Instacart all the time, and it's helpful to me on two levels. One, when I'm really busy and I just can't get to the grocery store. And two, it helps me avoid buying things that are on sale or, those shiny things, I like to call them. So when I go to the grocery store, if I have a craving or I see my Reese's peanut butter cup, I'm more likely to buy those types of things when I'm physically at the grocery store rather than going onto Instacart, right? If I shop from my phone, I pick things out, it's delivered directly to my door. I can write my grocery list before. That's the only things I purchase, and that's what comes to my house. So just something to think about. Having a light dinner versus a heavy dinner. So as far as your meals being of more substance, I would do a lighter breakfast, have your heavier meals for lunch or later in the day, and then having a really light dinner, 2-ish hours before you go to sleep. So if you eat a really heavy meal late at night before you go to bed, your body is going to have a hard time digesting that while you're sleeping. So a lighter dinner would be a better option. Limiting your sugar, right? Maybe not reducing or removing all of it, but trying to limit it. Sugar is extremely inflammatory, and you do get that sugar high and that sugar crash. Breath work and meditation and reducing stress. Also, 3 top things to put into practice for your gut health habits. And you'll notice some of these things are repetitive, right? So I'm talking about breath work and meditation under gut health, but I've also already talked about that for your morning routine. So you're already getting that in there. Stress is a huge, huge factor for gut health. If you've ever been anxious and gotten a stomach ache, and if you think about even with teaching, when I taught, how many kids who had family problems and things going on the home front would come in and have to be sent to the nurse for stomach issues all the time. So stress really plays a huge, huge role in our gut health. And once you get into the breath work and the meditation, you will really start to notice a difference. I always know when I'm stressed because I can feel it in my belly before I feel it anywhere else. And like I said, I know I'm kind of talking a lot. I hate to be kind of talking at you. So if anybody has questions, if anybody wants to share anything about gut health, if anybody has questions about gut health, about probiotics, about anything of this nature, please feel free to hop on and share. And I didn't want to get too technical with the gut health because that can be a whole presentation in and of itself. Let's see, why is this not letting me move down? There we go. Okay. A, action plans for self-care. So it's really important to actually take action on what we say we're going to do, right? We can talk all day about these things, but if we don't actually put them into action, we're not going to see that change. And we talk about self-care a lot. Self-care is not necessarily taking a bubble bath and going to get a massage all the time, but there can be other things. And really, as you're watching this, maybe pick 2 or 3 things from this list right now, whether you write them down on a sticky note with you or you just put them in your head. Pick 3 things that you can create an action plan to put into place for yourself over the next week. So what from this list would be easy enough for you to implement if you're not already doing it, right? Meditate between a major task or before a big meeting. I did a quick 5-minute meditation before I hopped on this call today. If I know I have a really busy week of work, depending on which is my longest day, I make sure that my meditation that day is a little bit longer. If you have a meeting at work, can you take 5 minutes out of your lunch and meditate instead? Detox from social media. Really hard to do, and I'm really bad at that. But it's amazing the difference in your brain. And for me, one of the things that I personally have created an action plan for is to not check social media the second I wake up. I use my phone for my alarm clock. I get up, I turn the alarm off, and then I get up, and the first thing I do before my morning routine is I have to come down and take care of the dogs. And I have a tendency to get on my phone and check social media while I'm doing my dog stuff. And so I've tried to make a really clear action plan to not do that. Get a massage. Take yourself on a date, right? Solo time is really important. Meal prep your meals and snacks. Meal prep can be a huge thing for self-care. I hate meal prepping because I don't really like to cook and I don't really like to do meal prep. But when I do it, it makes my week so much easier. So even if it's only 2 to 3 days of meal prep, I can easily prep 3 days of 3 meals a day in about 1 hour. I use my air fryer. I use the oven. I keep things simple. It doesn't have to be fancy. I know, sorry, my old dog is whining here. So try to make it as easy as you can. But if you can have meals and snacks prepped and ready to go that you can just grab and roll rather than being stressed about what you're going to cook that day and grabbing something that's unhealthy and take out. Take movement breaks. Drink from a reusable water bottle so you can actually track how much water you are drinking. Get more sleep. So maybe that just means going to bed 20 minutes earlier, right? Or getting better sleep. Reduce your caffeine intake. And also watch how long during the day you're drinking caffeine, right? So try to stop your caffeine by late morning so you're not drinking it all throughout the day. Build a support system in and out of work. Who are your go-to people? Who is one person that you can call when you're having a bad day that you can vent or talk things over with? Plan social gatherings. Are you working 7 days a week? Are you not making time for friends and family? So plan something, put it on the calendar, right? It's always kind of the running joke about being an adult that we have to plan these things out, but that's what I do. I plan coffee dates, breakfasts, or a walk on the trail with friends. And because of our lives, we often have to plan them out anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks in advance to go get coffee, but put it on the calendar. Take up a hobby and join a gym or take a class. So what are, 2 to 3, I do meal prep every week. Awesome. That's great. Yeah. I wish I did it more often, honestly. I don't do it every week, but I'm close to it. Anything that you think would work well for you on this list, if you want to pop it in, maybe put it in the chat and create an action plan for yourself, right? If you put it out here in the chat, you're more likely to do it. So what is maybe 1, 2, or 3 things that you personally are going to take from this list and try to implement into your life? So here's what I'm going to say. I'm not even putting in the chat, but I will verbally say that I am going to meal prep on Sunday. So that will be my action plan for next week. Yes, reminder about the coffee intake. Yeah, and it's hard with coffee because I tend to be like a sipper. I don't drink my coffee all at once. I sip it, I put it down, I reheat it, so like throughout the day, and next thing I know, it's 1, 2, 3 in the afternoon. I'm still sipping on my coffee and I'm like, ooh, not my intention. So I have to be a little bit more aware and intentional about that. Massage sounds good. Absolutely. I think all of us could use a massage, right? Get more sleep, meditate more, and reduce coffee intake. Absolutely. And I think too, if you reduce your coffee intake and you meditate more, then you're going to automatically sleep more. So the 2 things that you're doing are going to automatically bring you that 3rd thing. We subscribe to Blue Apron, which is so helpful for helping meal prep. Plus my husband and now son split up meal prep duties now. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome that you have help. Yeah. And Blue Apron, anything that works for you. There's a ton of meal delivery options out there online. I mean, you can literally get anything online now. And some of them you have to cook more. I don't know what Blue Apron is like, but some of them will send you all the ingredients and then you actually have to cook them. Some of them will actually send you like cooked meals in individual containers. And obviously financial things are involved in that. You have to determine like what you're able to afford or willing to pay for kind of thing. But definitely, look into the options that you have. My meal prep, if and when I do it, like I said, I love the air fryer. If you do not have an air fryer, it is a really good purchase. So I do really simple things. I do tofu and fish. Usually I do roasted veggies. Roasted veggies are super easy to put in the oven. If I do shrimp, I throw them in the air fryer. So don't overthink it. Your meal prep doesn't have to be fancy, right? It just has to be healthy and it has to be ready to roll. Headspace is a meditation app and also on Netflix. Yeah, I got started with it now. I'm back on the action plan. Awesome, Rita. Thank you. Yeah, Headspace is great. I don't have Netflix, but if there's something on Netflix, awesome. There's also a ton of stuff on YouTube. So, there's so much stuff out there in virtual land that you can use that is free. So, whatever you can find is great. Just make it easy. All right, C, clear and intentional communication. This is really important, right? And this has been a big learning curve for me over the last couple years. And this is something that I made my own commitment to in the last year to really work on is my personal communication, how I communicate with other people, what my boundaries are, what my needs are, and my ability to listen to other people and kind of understand what their boundaries and needs are as well. So often we communicate on autopilot, right? We're distracted, we lack focus, we're acting from limited emotional awareness or emotional protection. We're spouting off the cuff, we're abbreviated, we're lazy, we're habituated. That's just how we are. It's the nature of the world right now, especially with so much technology and texting and social media, right? It drives me crazy when I have conversations with people and people aren't writing in complete sentences anymore. And we're writing abbreviated words, like we're too lazy to write the whole word out. It's crazy. So, we tend to communicate on autopilot. So thinking about being more intentional with your communication, if we think about what that word intentional means, it means it's done with an awareness of our purpose and its effects on others. And in order for your communication to be intentional, you have to have both of those things. You have to be aware of what your purpose in communicating whatever it is going to be, and then what the effect on that other person is going to be. So 5 quick tips. 1, think before you speak. Mindfulness about what you say, when you say it, and why. And I have been guilty of this in the past, right? In the past, I was really hot-headed. I would just spout off. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm just being honest, right? But the reality was I was just being not intentional. I wasn't thinking about the purpose of my words or the effects on others. I was more concerned with myself. So, just being really mindful. You can't take your words back. So once the words are out of your mouth, then you have to deal with the consequences. So thinking before you speak. Number 2, being committed to developing your self-awareness. And this is really a lifelong thing, and it's the foundation of communication. So developing your self-awareness, just like you go back up to that definition of intentional, awareness of your purpose, when you think before you speak, before the words come out of your mouth, be aware of why you are saying them. Are they necessary? What do I want to get out of this conversation? Sometimes a conversation can be put off till the next day, and it depends if it's a work thing and it's something that needs to be discussed immediately, obviously, but in general, most conversations can be put off to a better time if need be. And you can say to somebody, I'm not in the emotional headspace right now to have this conversation. I need some more time to think about things before I respond to this. Or maybe you notice that the person you're about to conversate with is not in the right emotional headspace, and you put the conversation off because you realize that they are not ready for it. So be aware of those things. Number 3, develop skill around your body language habits. Also guilty of this in my past as well. My mother used to tell me if looks could kill, right? You could tell what I was thinking and feeling by my facial expression all the time. So think about your facial expression, your tone of voice, and your overall body language and what that is portraying to other people, because your words could come out saying one thing, but your face, your tone of voice, and the way that you are carrying your body is going to give off a completely different energy. So your energy is going to enter the room before your voice even does any of the talking. So develop self-awareness around that, and develop the skill in altering that to match what your purpose is. Number 4, watch your words. Kind of goes up with number 1, right? Words matter. You can't take them back. And we are all guilty. Feel free to write guilty in the room chat. We are all guilty of saying something that we didn't mean, right? We're all guilty of saying something to somebody that we wish we could take back. We're all guilty of saying something and being like, ooh, I didn't mean it that right way, right? People take things differently than what our purpose was. I call them toothpaste words. You can't put it back into the tube. Absolutely. Yeah. Try putting toothpaste back into the tube. It's not going to work. It's going to be really messy. Guilty. Yeah. I mean, we're all guilty, and I think the interesting thing is too, in this day and age, when we talk about communication, unfortunately, we're not always face to face with people. So it's different. We're talking through text, we're talking through email, we're doing this type of virtual thing. And I can't tell you how many times in a text message conversation, things have been taken out of context, or the implication has not been what it was intended, because you can't really get tone of voice from a text message. And I'm guilty of it. I will pick up a tone from someone who sent me a message and assume that they meant something. And then when we kind of hash it out, that wasn't their intention at all. So I think it's almost more important now to be super clear with our words, because we're writing more than actually speaking. So just something to think about. And number 5, which is probably, I think, more important than anything, notice what you are feeling in all of your communications. So here's the question for you. In any communication that you have with someone where you feel yourself reacting to a situation, are your emotional responses appropriate to the context of the communication in the present moment, or are you viewing the conversation through an old lens that is full of baggage? That sounds like a lot, right? But the gist of it is, we all are coming to the table, to our relationships, whether they are personal or professional, with baggage, right? We are all coming to the table looking at things through a lens from experience that we had in the past with other humans. And oftentimes we have a tendency to respond to a situation in the present moment because it's a trigger for us, or it reminds us of a past experience. And we will then project these feelings that are old feelings to in the moment, when it's not really appropriate and it's not really relevant. So just something to really be mindful of. And those are things where we dive into in the 45 to Thrive program, right? Those types of questions are what the journal prompts are. It's really kind of diving in, doing some inner shadow work, and kind of checking in with ourselves. Like, okay, what is my baggage and how is it playing a role in my relationship, in my communication, in how I interact with people? Am I projecting my old junk onto this new situation when it's not really necessary or appropriate? So, all right, last one. T, I think we have 2 slides left. Yep, just want to check myself. All right, so the last part of the impact method, T, transform stress response patterns. And really, this is why we want to do all the other things, right? We want to transform how we respond to stress. So during those moments and times in our life when things are out of balance, because usually they are, how are we responding to it? And is that how we want to respond, or can we shift it? So when we think about our stress response patterns, we have 4 major stress response domains. You have physiological, behavioral, subjective experience, and cognitive function, right? How many times have you felt really stressed or anxious and all of a sudden felt your face get flushed, or your temperature change, or you've been in a situation where you were afraid or frightened or triggered? Maybe you kind of trembled, you get sick to your stomach. Those are physiological. Cognitive functioning, maybe we kind of shut down, zone out. Things like that will happen when you're really stressed. So our stress reactivity, it's our capacity or tendency to respond to a stressor. It's a vulnerability factor for the development of diseases. That is important. So your ability to respond to stress will affect your ability to fight off disease and illness. In a stressful situation, we have a choice in how we respond, to not react. And this awareness is how we begin to repattern our behaviors, which goes back to behavior modification, right? That's what I've done since the beginning of time with teaching. And that's exactly what this is. We want to modify our behaviors. So when we practice breathing, relaxation, meditation, we learn to hold space for healthier and more effective responses. And somebody brought up yoga. If you have a yoga practice, it's a beautiful way to learn how to hold space for other responses. And so in kind of wrapping things up here, because I'm also looking at the time, we're almost out of time, ideas, helpful tips to transform your stress response pattern. So 1, understand the role of your attitude, right? Your attitude can play a huge role in how you respond to things. It's your perspective. So when you think about your attitude, think about your perspective and how you can change that. 2, examine your thought patterns. Are you walking around with these self-limiting beliefs? Are you walking around with these negative thought patterns, assuming that everything's going to turn out poorly? 3, practice positive self-talk. The way that we talk to ourselves in our mind is huge. Number 4, change what you can. Number 5, solution-focused coping, taking action to create change. 6, find and eliminate nagging stressors or tolerations. Real quickly, I just want to touch on that. I would encourage you, this is also a journal prompt that I have people do, and it's a full exercise that we do in the 45 to Thrive program. It's really a matter of, and you could do it quickly this week, make a list of 5 to 10 interactions or experiences that you've had this week. Write down what they were, who they were with, where they were, and how you felt with them, right? I interacted with X, Y, and Z at work. I left feeling frustrated and depleted, right? Okay, well, now let's go back and decide if that situation is a nagging stressor, if that's something that you tolerate. Is this a person that you have to interact with, right? So we go back through these experiences and we determine if they're tolerations that we can get rid of, eliminate, or we can modify how we respond to them, or whatever the case may be. We go into that in a little bit more depth. And then build resilience through self-care, exercise, meditation, and a gratitude attitude. So I think for me, the biggest piece to get out of all of this really is that our ability or our inability to deal with stress really plays a huge role in our emotional wellness and our physical health. And so at the end of the day, if we can't learn how to transform our stress response patterns and learn how to deal with all the challenges that life is going to throw us, we are going to end up physically ill and facing some mental health issues. So big, important stuff. And I am right on time at 12:45. Okay. Anybody have any questions, thoughts, anything that you would like me to talk a little bit more about, answer any questions on? I know there was a little bit of time for questions at the end, I believe.
Sometimes people put them in the chat, so it
Yeah.
might take a minute for them to come up.
Okay.
This has been really good. I think a lot of us are, so Danielle Pope said, I've taken away so much from your presentation. Thank you so much for your time.
You're
And
welcome.
I would venture to say that everybody else on this session has the same takeaway.
Awesome. Thank you, Marta. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shawanda. Yeah, and I'm here as a resource, so I don't know how the information gets out to people, but you know, I do a lot of work in the community. I teach yoga, I teach Pilates. A good friend of mine, Alicia, and I are putting on our 4th and 5th workshop. We do a mind-body melt workshop. Thank you, Mary Ellen. Alicia does the melt method, is a really nice soft foam rolling technique, and then I do a breathwork session. So, you know, there's several things coming up in the community. I'm also happy to kind of direct you elsewhere if what I provide does not work. Yeah. So I'll type my contact information in the chat if that is easy.
And we can certainly send it out as well.
Yeah. So I'll put it in here if you want to take it from here, and then we can also send it out. Email, phone, and I do have a website. So I'm on my phone all the time. Text is probably the easiest to reach out to me, but email works as well. Just make sure I typed that all in correctly. Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate that. Yeah, I am here to help however I can. And I'll send you information on the event that I mentioned last night. There will be an event up in Kent County. It's not until September, but it'll be a large array of health and wellness people just kind of coming together to, you know, provide a whole day of services and resources. So
That is so great. Thank you so much, Tara.
you are welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Have a lovely day. Thanks.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.